A black woman put two arrogant, racist saleswomen in their place in a jewelry store. Naomi stepped into the store with a calm confidence, her soft brown eyes scanning the cases as a faint smile played on her lips. She wore a simple but well-fitted navy blue dress and carried a leather tote that had seen years of loyal service. Her elegance wasn't loud. It was the kind of grace that didn't need validation. But as she crossed the threshold, the room seemed to pause for a moment before the usual rhythm resumed. Behind the main counter, Amber and Tiffany were perched on high stools, chatting in hushed voices. Amber, with her sharp blonde bob and perfectly manicured nails, noticed Naomi first. Her lips curled into a subtle sneer, and she leaned toward Tiffany, whose dark hair was piled into a neat bun. "Look at her," Amber whispered, her voice dripping with disdain. Tiffany glanced up briefly and let out a soft laugh, her nose crinkling as if Naomi's presence had somehow offended her. "Why do they even come in here?" Amber continued, rolling her eyes. "She probably thinks she can just window shop and touch everything." Tiffany giggled again, but her voice carried a sharper edge. "Yeah, let's see how long she lasts." Naomi approached the counter, her eyes alight with interest as she admired the display of rings. Amber and Tiffany exchanged a quick glance, a silent agreement to let her wait. They turned their attention to a well-dressed couple who had just entered, showering them with bright smiles and enthusiastic greetings. Minutes ticked by, but Naomi remained composed. She traced her fingers along the edge of the glass case, her expression calm, as if she didn't notice the deliberate snub. In truth, she had noticed, and she felt the familiar sting. It wasn't the first time she'd faced such thinly veiled condescension, and it likely wouldn't be the last. Finally, when the couple left, Naomi stepped forward, her voice warm and steady. "Excuse me, I'd like to see that diamond ring, please," she said, pointing to an elegant piece with a radiant cut stone that caught the light like a prism. Amber didn't bother to hide her disdain as she folded her arms. "That one?" she asked, her tone sharp. "It's very expensive. Are you sure it's what you're looking for?" Naomi held her gaze, unflinching. "Yes, I'd like to see it." Tiffany smirked, leaning closer. "Maybe you should try a store that's more in your price range," she said, her voice oozing mock sweetness. "This one might be a little too much for you." Amber chimed in, her laughter barely concealed. "You're in the wrong place, sweetheart." For a moment, the air seemed to freeze. Naomi's heart squeezed, but her expression remained serene. She felt the weight of their assumptions, the cruel bite of their words. But instead of snapping back, she took a deep breath, letting their arrogance wash over her like water over stone. She smiled, a calm, knowing smile that made both saleswomen falter slightly. "Don't worry," Naomi said, her voice as steady as ever. "I'll be back." With that, she turned and walked out of the store, her head held high. She didn't need to say anything more. The promise in her words, and the quiet fire in her eyes, spoke volumes. Naomi stepped out of the jewelry store and into the afternoon air. The sting of the saleswoman's words lingered, like tiny needles pricking her heart. She walked briskly, each step echoing with a mix of frustration and resolve. She wasn't angry for herself. No, she'd faced this kind of behavior too many times to count. What hurt was the reminder of a world where people judged others not by their character, but by the color of their skin or the simplicity of their clothes. As she turned onto a quiet street, memories flooded her mind. She thought of the time a teacher had underestimated her in school, assuming she wasn't smart enough to lead a project, or the time a waiter had skipped over her at a fancy restaurant, serving everyone else first. Each moment had left a scar, but each scar had also made her stronger. Today's insult was no different. Naomi stopped at a park bench and sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. For a moment, her chest tightened, and she felt the burn of tears threatening to spill. But then she inhaled deeply, letting the fresh air fill her lungs. "Not today," she whispered to herself. "Not ever." Her phone buzzed in her bag, snapping her out of her thoughts. She pulled it out and stared at the screen, a faint smile forming. Naomi wasn't just anyone. She was Naomi Harper, one of the most sought-after jewelers in the world. Her designs were worn by royalty, celebrities, and business tycoons, but very few people knew her face. She preferred it that way. Her work spoke for itself, and she'd always believed that true value couldn't be measured by appearances. An idea sparked in her mind, bringing a sense of calm and determination. She opened her contacts and tapped on a familiar name. The phone rang twice before a cheerful voice answered. "Naomi, what's up?" Lisa, her trusted assistant, greeted her with enthusiasm. "I need your help," Naomi said, her tone firm but light. "Do we still have the Eternal Glow necklace in the vault?" Lisa gasped. "The Eternal Glow? You mean the necklace? The one with the rare radiant diamond and the custom gold work? That's a showstopper." "Exactly," Naomi replied. "I want you to deliver it to a store. No explanations, just send it with a note saying it's from an exclusive, anonymous designer." Lisa hesitated. "Okay, but which store? What's this about?" Naomi paused, her smile returning as she thought of Amber and Tiffany's smug faces. "I'll send you the address," she said. "Trust me, this is going to be worth it." "Got it," Lisa replied, her voice bubbling with curiosity. "Consider it done." After hanging up, Naomi leaned back on the bench, her confidence returning. She imagined Amber and Tiffany's reactions when the necklace arrived, how their eyes would widen at its brilliance, how they'd scramble to showcase it without realizing who was behind it. The thought filled her with a quiet sense of satisfaction. "Let's see how they handle this," Naomi murmured to herself, her lips curving into a sly smile. "If this story has you hooked, don't stop here." What do you think will happen next? Will Naomi's plan teach the saleswoman a lesson they'll never forget? Stay tuned to find out how this tale of dignity, resilience, and sweet revenge unfolds. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to like this post to show your support. Click on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Subscribe for more captivating stories like this one, and share with your friends who love tales of empowerment and unexpected twists. A few days after Naomi's phone call to Lisa, the luxury jewelry store hummed with its usual air of opulence. Amber and Tiffany lounged at their posts, their bored expressions a mix of disinterest and entitlement. That was until a sleek black courier arrived, carrying a small, elegant box wrapped in velvet. "Special delivery for the manager," the courier said with a professional tone. The box seemed to glimmer in his hands, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Amber's curiosity was piqued immediately. "What is it?" she asked, her tone sharper than she intended. Tiffany, always eager to be in the loop, leaned over her shoulder. The store manager, Mr. Blake, a tall, serious man with sharp eyes, appeared from his office. He took the box, eyeing the label, and raised an eyebrow. Carefully, he opened the lid to reveal the necklace inside. The gasps were audible. The necklace was a masterpiece. A radiant diamond sat at the center, its facets catching the light in a way that made it shimmer like liquid sunlight. Intricate goldwork surrounded the gem, forming a design that seemed both delicate and bold, modern yet timeless. It was a piece that could stop anyone in their tracks. There was a note tucked inside the box. Mr. Blake read it aloud. From an exclusive, anonymous designer whose work is known worldwide. Estimated value, $2.3 million. Amber's eyes widened. $2.3 million. She whispered, the words almost choking her. Tiffany's jaw dropped. "This could put us on the map. Do you know what kind of clients this will attract?" she exclaimed, practically vibrating with excitement. "Put it on display immediately," Mr. Blake ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. He handed the necklace to Amber, who clutched it with trembling hands. Amber and Tiffany exchanged a quick glance. Both were calculating how they could spin this to their advantage. "Maybe we should tell Mr. Blake it was my idea to highlight new designers," Amber said slyly. clutching the necklace like it was her personal find. "Your idea." Tiffany shot back, narrowing her eyes. "I was the one who suggested we focus on exclusivity last month." The two bickered quietly as they prepared the display, each one determined to take credit for the necklace. Neither of them noticed the faint trace of a knowing smile on Mr. Blake's lips as he returned to his office. A few days later, Naomi walked back into the store. She was dressed as simply as before, her poise and quiet confidence unchanged. This time, though, Amber and Tiffany spotted her immediately. Their eyes lit up, not with disdain, but with desperation to impress her. Amber nudged Tiffany. "That's her," she whispered. "We need this sale." They practically tripped over themselves to greet Naomi, their sugary smiles plastered across their faces. "Welcome back," Tiffany chirped. "How can we help you today?" Naomi gave them a polite nod. "I heard you have a new necklace on display," she said, her voice calm but curious. "I'd like to see it." Amber rushed to retrieve the necklace from the display case. She handled it like it was the Holy Grail, presenting it to Naomi with an air of exaggerated reverence. "Oh, this is a one-of-a-kind piece," she gushed. "Designed by an exclusive artist. Only the richest people in the world could afford this." Tiffany chimed in, eager to outdo Amber. "You'll never find anything like it again. It's absolutely priceless." Naomi tilted her head slightly, studying the necklace. She reached out to touch it, her fingers grazing the goldwork as a small smile played on her lips. Then, in a voice as smooth as silk, she said, "I know. I designed it." The room fell silent. Amber and Tiffany froze, their faces draining of color as the weight of Naomi's words hit them. Their mouths opened and closed like fish gasping for air, but no sound came out. Naomi placed the necklace gently back in Amber's trembling hands. Her gaze was steady, her expression calm. "Judging people by how they look can be a very costly mistake," she said softly, her words cutting sharper than any diamond. The silence in the jewelry store was deafening. Amber and Tiffany stood frozen, their faces a mixture of shock and embarrassment. Their carefully crafted authority had crumbled in an instant. Naomi, the woman they had dismissed and insulted, stood before them as the brilliant mind behind the breathtaking necklace they had been fawning over. Before either of them could stammer a response, the door to the manager's office swung open. Mr. Blake strode out, his sharp eyes scanning the scene. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Amber was the first to recover, though just barely. "Mr. Blake," she stammered, clutching the necklace like it might save her. "This woman claims she's the designer of this necklace." Mr. Blake frowned, his gaze shifting to Naomi. "Is this true?" he asked, though his tone held no disbelief, only curiosity. Naomi nodded calmly. "Yes, I am. I created this piece. My assistant sent it here as a surprise." She turned her steady gaze to Amber and Tiffany, who were now visibly squirming under her scrutiny. "Unfortunately, I didn't expect such a chilly welcome when I first visited." Mr. Blake's expression darkened. He turned to the two saleswomen, his voice cold. "Is this true? Were you rude to Miss Harper?" Amber and Tiffany exchanged panicked glances, their earlier arrogance replaced by palpable fear. Tiffany tried to backpedal. "We didn't know who she was," she said weakly. "We thought that she didn't belong here." Mr. Blake interrupted sharply, his tone slicing through her excuse. "You thought you could judge someone based on how they look." Amber opened her mouth to protest, but no words came. She looked down, her cheeks burning red with shame. Turning back to Naomi, Mr. Blake's expression softened. "Ms. Harper, I sincerely apologize for their behavior. It's unacceptable, and I assure you, it will not happen again." Naomi held up a hand, her voice calm but firm. "Thank you, Mr. Blake, but firing them won't teach them the lesson they need to learn." Amber and Tiffany looked up in surprise, their expressions a mixture of relief and confusion. Naomi continued, addressing the entire room. Judging someone by how they look shows how little you understand real value. True value isn't in what you see on the surface. It's in the craftsmanship, the creativity, and the heart that goes into something or someone. Her words hung in the air, each one landing like a stone in the silence. Then Naomi turned to Mr. Blake. Instead of letting them go, I suggest they attend a jewelry training session I'll personally host. I'll teach them about the artistry behind these pieces, and more importantly, about respect. Mr. Blake nodded, his respect for Naomi evident. That's a generous offer, Miss Harper. I'll make sure they attend. A week later, Amber and Tiffany arrived at the workshop Naomi had arranged. They were nervous, their earlier smugness completely replaced by humility. The room was filled with tools, sketches, and raw materials, diamonds and gemstones in their natural, unpolished forms. Naomi greeted them warmly, but didn't coddle them. "Welcome," she said. "Today, I'm going to show you what it takes to create something extraordinary. But first, I want to remind you of one thing. Respect is the foundation of everything, whether you're designing jewelry or working with people." For the next several hours, Naomi guided them through the intricate process of crafting a piece of jewelry. She showed them how raw gems were shaped, how delicate goldwork was done, and how every detail mattered. Amber and Tiffany were surprised by how much effort and skill it required. They realized how shallow their previous judgments had been. By the end of the session, both women were visibly changed. Tiffany approached Naomi, her voice quiet but sincere. "I'm so sorry for how we treated you. We were wrong. I've learned so much today, about jewelry and about myself." Amber nodded, her eyes downcast. "Me too. Thank you for giving us this chance to learn." Naomi smiled, her warmth returning. "Apology accepted. Just remember, every person, like every gemstone, has value. You just have to look beyond the surface." As Naomi walked out of the store a few days later, her head held high, Amber and Tiffany watched her go. They weren't the same women they had been. They felt a newfound respect for their craft, their customers, and most importantly, for the quiet strength of a woman who had taught them what true value really meant. Naomi smiled to herself, the weight of the past lifted from her shoulders. Justice, she realized, didn't always mean punishment. Sometimes, it meant transformation. Did you enjoy this wonderful story? What are your thoughts? Drop your thoughts in the comment. Also, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.